Samvedna Care. And welcome to this very special and first of its kind webinar on employee mental well-being, which we are hosting today. I'd also like to welcome our guests, Venkat, Glory, and Sanjeeta, and I'll be introducing them shortly. Since our inception, we have worked extensively in promoting early detection and diagnosis of mental health issues. Our mission has always been to encourage help-seeking behavior and reduce the stigma around mental health. Samvedna is today a leading technology-enabled mental health service provider, and we provide expert-led services for mental health and well-being. And our care solutions are all, person-centric, evidence-based, focusing on the overall well-being of individuals and their families. So I'll just start with some data which we have, and probably a lot of you are familiar with this. But according to WHO, there is an estimate that poor mental health yields in almost $1 trillion loss in economy because of lost productivity annually. And in India, there have been reports by WHO, this was way back in 2019, which talked about, India itself is likely to lose $1 trillion in economy because of poor mental health in the workforce between 2013 to 2030. The pandemic has definitely brought the conversation more openly. People have accepted it, they are talking more about it, and it has somewhat reduced the stigma around it. Many organizations in India have now adopted mental health and well-being services for their organizations. And they have also, tried to run certain best practices. And we have some practitioners here today who would also be sharing their experiences. However, there are still challenges in ensuring, that these kind of programs run on an ongoing basis. They are institutionalized and they are sustainable. And we'd definitely like to hear from a lot of the audience also as to what is their experience, with running mental well-being programs. So this is going to be an interactive session, and we will be running a couple of polls as well. Please feel free to type in your questions in the chat. And I'll now go to move over and introduce my panelists for today. And they're all distinguished veterans in their field. So I have with me Venkat Iyer, who is the co-founder of Aventus. Venkat has worked across multinationals, Indian private sectors, micro, small, and medium enterprises, and growth startups over the years. And he brings deep insight and experience on business models, operating structures, leadership development advisory, and onboarding leaders into companies. Venkat strongly believes in building a culture that embodies the spirit of fun and well-being, and nurturing and recognizing performance. Prior to Aventus Partners, Venkat worked with EY as an associate director in human capital for almost 6 years. So Venkat, welcome to this panel, and thank you for coming on board. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks for having me.
My next panelist is Glory. She's a Chief People Officer and Technology Strategist at Xebia. Glory is a distinguished leader with 25 plus years experience in technology services. She's a very strong people leader. I can vouch for it personally, and drives her team passionately while aligning with organizational goals. And she has implemented some of the best innovative employee engagement programs in her career, which I have personally seen. I'd also like to welcome in Sanjeeta Prasad. She's a consultant psychologist at Samvedna, and Sanjeeta has more than 35 plus experience working with hospitals and clinics. And she has done a lot of work in psychological testing, evaluation, as well as dealing with patients. And she has conducted various workshops for corporates, PSUs, and educational institutes. So welcome, Sanjeeta, to the discussion. And I also have with me my co-moderator for the day, Meenakshi. Meenakshi is a senior clinical psychologist at Samvedna. She is an alumni of IBHAS, Delhi. And Meenakshi works with various age populations, right from 25 to 90 plus. So she has expertise in various mental issues as well as illnesses. And I also have with me Jayashree Dasgupta. She is my co-founder. She's actually, I don't know if she'll be able to switch on her video or not, but Jayashree is in Dublin right now. Um, so I would just like to request to start with, I'll request each of the panelists, Venkat, I'd like to start with you to share, your perspective on this subject. And, you have been, you're looking at organizations in a very different way from a strategic point of view. So what is your views on this topic?
So I'll just start with a very short and crisp summary in terms of what I have understood as emotional well-being to kind of indicate to organizations and to people also. So from an employee perspective, if I look at it, and I'm purely looking at it right now from the employee as well as the HR department's point of view, stress management is one thing which is extremely important. Improved communication is an important part of any kind of well-being program for us, basically. Enhanced self-awareness is something that I think is right on top of the entire pile. Increased resilience, which is the ability to kind of take pressure as well as to kind of distribute it in our system to be able to kind of commit to certain tasks, activities, programs, projects, etc. is very important. And the last but not the least is work-life balance. These are the basic traits or emotions that you could kind of attach to the entire process of emotional well-being. Now, somewhere in each of these is embedded a kind of a understanding that from an HR perspective's point of view, HR department's perspective's point of view, it's about enabling our managers to be able to understand these things. It's not about us understanding it. It's about helping our managers and our feet on street, as well as our staff, to essentially understand what these things are, empathize with the situation that the employee is in, and to be able to kind of use the right tools and techniques to address the problem, essentially. So broadly speaking, from my point of view, that's how I'd encapsulate the entire discussion, the entire conversation that I would kind of like to hear more about.
Thank you, Venkat. Thank you. Very insightful. Glory, can I request you to come in and share your perspective?
Sure, Archana. Thank you for having this webinar. I think this is very, very important and much needed conversation, especially among the HR folks, and which we can take it up to the entire organization. See, from my perspective, I've been talking to a lot of people about work-life balance, mental well-being, right? I think the very basic of mental well-being is about talking about our fear and failure to people. Today, with the invent of social media, where we get to see a lot of good things, right? If somebody is going on a vacation, Facebook is flooded with their pictures, the happy part of their life is seen to the outside world, and they don't get to see the reality. And it adds a lot of stress and pressure to people, and everybody tend to believe this is what an ideal family looks like, or ideal life looks like, right? And they try to copy. So what happens when the reality really hits the road? They're not able to handle it, and plus there is a fear of talking about it to their colleagues or to their friends or to the family, because they think they may be looked down by people. So if they can understand the reality and has the openness to talk to people, okay, without being judged, the mental well-being, or what we call it as a stress, to a greater extent may not be even there. I think that's one thing which I feel it's missing now, and we are more and more getting into this materialistic thing, which is adding a lot of pressure, and it creates a lot of stress in the system. So the earlier we were able to address it, okay, so I have read about one example. If you hold one glass of water, right, you won't feel the pain. But if you continue to hold it for like, hours together, you will feel the pain, right? The same thing with our problem as well. The problem could be as simple as it had been before, right? But we tend to hold it with us because we don't know whom to talk to, or we have that fear. Well, how will I be judged if I talk about it? Or I can, share it with somebody else. So that's very important to know when to talk to someone so that we kind of take it off from us and then have a better well-being. That's very important. So that's what I wanted to understand, how we can help people in that aspect, so that we have a healthy work I will not say work life balance here, but a healthy lifestyle, and make people more happy about what they are doing.
Great. Well, thank you, Glory. Very valid points. I think image building, or keeping that image, that strong suit, which we all like to play, that, we are good, kind of takes a toll itself on us. Yeah, Sanjeeta, can I bring you in for your comment?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Mr. Iyer and Gloria that it is a mental health is actually a personal journey, though, and the healing can happen. Healing can happen if you understand this personal journey. Having said that, I feel the organizations where we are working needs to be sensitized to the emotional needs of the people. We have seen, like you say, the WHO and even the lots of studies have shown that uh, you know uh, 1 out of 4 is having some kind of depressive or anxiety symptoms. We all have a neurosis, but to be able to understand our neurosis and to be able to identify, like you said, and to be able to work on it is, of course, our personal journey. At the same time, it's also the responsibility of the organization to understand, identify, and be compassionate towards their employee. And a lot can be done on that. And lots of people are doing these days, because after pandemic, we have seen a rise in all kinds of mental illnesses, like mental issues or health issues, I would say, if not illnesses, like depression, anxiety, to be more precise. And because of insecurities, like Gloria says, that we are confused as to what we want to achieve first in life. So because of insecurities, people have been suffering for a very long time, and which has, of course, resulted in low productivity, and which has resulted in in their personal as well as organizations' mental health. So the organization's responsibility is to understand, be compassionate towards them, have certain programs for them to enhance their knowledge, enhance their resilience, to enhance their ability to deal with crisis in life, and help them develop a more productive personality, I would say.
Okay, great. So a lot of responsibility on organizations. So, and I think that is where the next set of questions are really going to be. I mean, actually, I'll come to you when we are talking about the challenges. There's really, what you have talked about, Sanjeeta, is that, creating, and Venkat also mentioned that how do we enable managers to be more empathetic, and how do we sensitize organizations to run these programs, provide this kind of a support structure. I'm sure the decision makers at their end have their own challenges. And, I would like to, we have a lot of decision makers today in our audience here today. Should we run the poll now? So we'll just do a quick poll. And if you guys, everybody can share their, take a couple of minutes to answer this question, and then we will deliberate on this with our panelists as well. Are you roll it out? Okay. Can everybody see the questions?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. For some reason, I can't see the questions. Okay, I would request more people to share their thoughts. This is not going to be called out. It is anonymous. But it will help us understand what, what the challenges are. So,
I mean, if you are not able to see the screen, would it be great that if I just, read it out and
no, we can see the
any
screen.
one of us?
Navya, you can just end the poll and share it with them. She's just going to share the poll results with everyone so that we can all see it also.
Okay.
So all of you will be able to see it, and I can also just see. So interestingly, budget is not an issue, which is, which is very, very interesting for us, because sometimes we at our end, we feel that maybe budget is a constraint, but I think the biggest issue it seems to be coming out is how do you overcome employee hesitation stigma, which is, I think, 75% of the people have answered, right? And then we have finding the right resources, which is very valid, which is, I think, a big challenge, and poor utilization of the program, making it sustainable, and then, of course, the budget. Interesting, very interesting. So can I now request my panelists to please share, in their opinion, what are the challenges, or respond to these poll results, and, come in with their thoughts.
So Archana, I can talk about the challenges which we have faced, especially when COVID started, right? During that 2 years, everything was virtual, and we have signed up for a platform which is like 24/7, available with all this psychiatrist, psychologist, all kind of counselors, advisors, you name it, they had. And they did couple of sessions. They talked about mental health, well-being, did some program. Um, but if I have to really see, I will not even say that even it's like less than 1% of the people have used that facility or the options available for them over a period of 12 months. Okay. And, so, we tried multiple things, especially when we are working at a virtual place. Only mode of communication is, emails and, team calls, and then you have to virtually call people, right? And then, and whenever they have questions and trouble, this is an anonymous platform. They can go, their identity will not be told to the employer at any point in time. So they kind of have that kind of a confidentiality met. But number of people who have reached out to them is like pretty less. Okay, so one, we have not really worried about the budget. Okay, we said we need to have a platform where people can access at any point in time. And then when we looked at the inputs, like, they can give us, they gave us a category of concern that people were talking about. Most of the consensus were related to career growth. Okay, some kind of a problem at home, right? People who are not married, more about their, a future. So it was more about it, but I have not distinctly seen anybody talking about their mental health, okay, or they are in depression. So I would, if I remember correctly, I have not seen that at all. It was very, very generic category where we usually talk about, right? what's going to be my career progression? How is it going to be? I'm not happy with my project. What is that I should do? How can I improve myself? That is the category of questions or counseling they took. So the concern is still very, very valid, right? We talk a lot about employee well-being, and if people are not open about it, even though we talk a lot, right, there is always a fear attached. Okay, what will organization do if they see my productivity is going down because of this particular issue? Will I get a promotion, or will they even consider for a better role in an organization? Or if I go to another organization, will it have an impact on my background verification? There's a lot of things can get into people's mind. So that could be one of the reason why people don't talk about it. So from an organization per se, getting a business case created to get an approval to say, okay, this is a real need, where I have not really justified the cost or the investment I have done, in getting into the platform.
Okay.
See, this issue about stigma and a lot of negative attitude towards anybody who's having some kind of mental health issue is very common, and we've been fighting it all our life, all our professional life, so that is of course there, and we have to fight that out. We have to work very hard on that by spreading awareness, by having time to time programs for them, for being able to reach across to every employee of the organization, that it is okay to talk, that it is okay to build, okay to not feel all right all the time. And so the services will always be useful for people who you need to just talk. You just need to talk. So this is something we need to say across, and we don't need to label them as mental health, or we don't need to, but we need to spread awareness. See, we all are aware that there is mental illness and we need to take treatment. I'm aware sometimes that I'm going through a bad phase in my life, or I'm not able to manage a certain crisis in my life. I know I cannot do it, but I will not walk into a psychologist's clinic and discuss with this, because I have an intellectual understanding of the problem, but I don't convert that. I have not learned to convert that into an emotional insight. Okay, this is an emotional, so I need it. This is the need of the hour to probably go and talk, because now people are alone, people are working, people do not like to discuss with families. We do not discuss like friends, because lest they be labeled, or lest they be misunderstood. So it's important for everybody to communicate that it is okay to have mental health issues. It is just okay, and that we need to do something about it. And if organization as a whole understands that productivity and the health and the harmony of an organization depends on each individual, then they will definitely work hard for the people. They'll have time to time work, like Mr. Iyer said, stress management. You do get an insight as to how to deal with your stresses, and how to increase your communication, enhance your communication, or how to build on relationships, work relationships, which is so important. So I think we need to work very hard as a mental health professionals. I'm sure Meenakshi will agree with me, as mental health professionals, to spread awareness and education towards mental health issues.
Sanjeeta, just a follow-up question here.
Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
So who's speaking?
Talk about mental health here, right?
Yeah.
Mental illness, right? These words we kind of continue to use. And then we always try to relate to sometimes stress, sometimes to talk about some tough situation in our life. Okay. So when do people classify that as a mental illness? Okay. Is a stress is called a mental illness, or a mishap that had happened in a family? Is it a mental illness? It's a phase of life, right?
Yeah,
I think that's one clarity people would definitely like to get. What and when do we define this as a mental illness when somebody has to go for a treatment?
so when it affects your health, when it affects your productivity, when it starts telling on your personal and professional relationship, when it lingers for a longer time, then we can actually think of treatment, a professional help, I would say, rather than treatment. But if it is, if there's a crisis, there's a loss in a family, it's natural, it's normal to cry. It's normal to feel the grief. The grief takes 6 weeks sometimes, and sometimes even it takes 3 months to go. So that is, but it lingers for a period, for a longer period, and it becomes complicated and start affecting the various areas of life, then we consider that as a problem issue, and we need to address that.
Okay.
Great. No, I think awareness about mental health issues, and we have seen this, Samvedna has been in this space for 10 years, and we have been propagating awareness about whether it's, neurological disorders or mental health. Creating awareness is probably the first and the most important step so that people don't hesitate. But Venkat, coming to you, would you like to share, you've seen the poll results. Would you like to come in and share what you think from your perspective are the challenges organization face?
Sure. So in my point of view, I think from a practitioner's viewpoint, I believe there are 2 or 3 things that we need to keep in mind here, which is that like Glory was saying, there is a stigma attached to discussing mental health issues, and it is basically something that we have as a culture pushed under the carpet for a very long time. Somewhere the overriding expectation is that every individual has to be mentally strong in our culture. Any sign of weakness is something which is seen as a stigma, basically, and potentially an opportunity to kind of either take advantage of the person or to kind of run down the person. In all these cases, it's always been the case that the persons refuse to kind of address it upfront, or kind of trying to even surface it. And in the process of burying it, they also create a whole pool of anxiety for themselves because they are not able to handle it or deal with it. Now, unlike the West, where there is an active process of practically, I think 60% of the population being in therapy, in India, it's very rare to kind of have somebody go to therapy or to even admit that they're undergoing therapy. Now that's cultural, so it's nothing to do with organizations. Now let's kind of map that to organizations and see how it fits there. Now, if you look at organizations, again, it's the alpha male characteristic that is the winner takes all kind of this thing that we have always encouraged in companies, and therefore there is a certain image, quote unquote, of what a winner is and how a winner behaves and what is the kind of attitude a winner should have. Now, we have our own problems in that culture as well. So we kind of encourage toxicity. We encourage ridicule. We also encourage, to a large extent, running down of medium performers, basically. I'm not talking about top performers. I'm talking about people who are in the middle of the bell curve, which is the median portion of the population. Now, that not everybody will perform at the same level of efficiency, nor will everybody be expected to kind of pull the weight of the organization. But at the same time, managers need to understand that every resource is equally important from the organization's perspective. And we are also making sure that we are kind of treating everybody with respect and taking every employee along. Now, managers tend to kind of be favoritists. They tend to kind of encourage and promote the alpha categories at the cost of the lesser individuals. So we create a whole set of cultural problems within the organization, which maps which on top of the social issues that we have with regard to mental health. Now, if you were to unpack this and you were to kind of look at it from an organization's point of view, it's not a 1-year journey. It's not a 6-month journey. Something like this is probably going to be a 7 to 10-year roadmap, basically, for you to actually come to a point where you have a very well-established program and it is up and running and it's efficient, basically. Probably for the first 2 years, you will, like Glory was saying, you will probably not even have people coming and kind of talking on the helpline that you have in terms of the issues that they're facing, or kind of telling you categorically why they call the helpline. They may have called with something else in mind, but when it comes to the discussion point, they're discussing something else completely. So that's the kind of worry that the employee has at their end. But once you kind of break that barrier and kind of somebody has a breakthrough, or a set of people have a breakthrough, let's say 2 or 3 of them also, that breakthrough helps to kind of build the entire awareness of the program, essentially. And therefore, the awareness of what the program is doing, how it can help, is where the success factors will come in. Now, with every change management initiative, there is going to be a process that you're going to follow, which means that we have to establish this, we have to institutionalize it, and we have to make sure that you've carried it on for a specific set of time, irrespective of what is the volume outcome, because that is the amount of time it's going to kind of get to gain acceptance for some.
Agree. And I think that's where the decision makers we have to have that buy-in from them, that it's not like you mentioned. I mean, to say, you're saying 7 to 10 years. That's really how much time it'll take to institutionalize these things. And
that's right.
You need to have that willpower to sustain it, and wins from people. I think how how we talk about our physical health, right? So we talk about, I walk, we encourage, I walk 30 minutes a day, or I've done my 10,000 steps a day. So similarly, what am I doing for my mental well-being? Are we encouraging people to initiate that? I think one of the things which came up was lack of resources, and that's where I think organizations need a little help from experts or professionals who can walk with them to create that framework, and then leave it to them. Meenakshi, would you like to come in and share something?
Yeah, I just want to share that, in the past I have worked with people coming in from organizations, and it's very interesting, they keep on letting the problem simmer for some time, and they try to find self-help solutions for those problems. So, for example, talking to their loved ones, or reading up material online, looking at blogs. So they try to find information about why they're experiencing certain problems, but uh, they don't think about going to a professional. So that is where the challenge is, because there is that, again, as the poll reveals, that there is some level of stigma associated with being labeled as a person with some mental health concerns. And if we can just identify these concerns at initial levels, that is where we can start making a difference. So if a person is, let's say, experiencing mild irritation on a daily basis, that doesn't mean that there's an illness. It is just a sign that maybe they're burnt out, or maybe it's the beginning of anxiety problems or depressive features, but it's not a full-blown illness. But if they let it go, it might turn into something else. It might lead to creation of severe illnesses. And that is where people would need better resources, people who can come in and maybe train them or sensitize them that these are issues which are very common, and these can be managed at the initial stages. And if we can do that, it could have a huge impact on the organizational level. It could lead to improved productivity, it could lead to better work performances, and a more positive workplace culture. Yeah. You're on mute.
Hi, I saw Archana. You want to come in? You raised your hand. My namesake. Archana, you're on mute. I think Archana is not around. So we can leave a message for her so that she can come in. Anybody else has anything to share from the audience? You can type in your challenges in the chat window also. If we didn't cover it in the poll question, we'd like to hear your thoughts. And I think at this time, we'd like to, do you want to run your next poll? Yeah. So we'll just look at some of the solutions which organizations provide for mental health support. Let's see what we get to hear from everybody. May I request everybody to just take a couple of minutes and try to answer the poll question. Can you see? Everybody can see the poll question? Aviral had also raised his hand. Aviral, would you like to come in?
Archana, it's actually Deepthi. Aviral is from my team who shared the Zoom ID with me.
Okay.
Thanks for calling out. All right. So great call out so far and a great session in understanding what are the steps we can take initially and how can organizations approach mental health. And I think sensitizing the managers and going after that on a frequent basis is something that would land better. My question is, I just feel when we look at mental health in silo, then a lot of actions come into picture. But when we are looking at that as a combination of business output, then all of those actions cannot land. And we as leaders have to look at a business output because all the employees are also the resources that get us to that point. So how do we look at that as a combination of business and not have to work on mental health in silo? And that's my issue with any session that I go to, that, okay, these are the 20 things that you could do, but then that's not my only job. That's part of my job. The other challenge that I face as a leader is using the word depression, and I'm going to be very transparent about calling out, in Gen Z has become a very normal thing. So I don't know if I have the mental bandwidth myself and the time to keep observing the minute behaviors, keep talking about them, about their personal lives day in and day out, and then figure out if this was normal stress, anxiety, or was it depression. And that's too much of an ask from the manager itself. I think these challenges today are causing the managers more mental health issues than their people on the ground. So how do we strike that balance and come to a more realistic solution versus an aspirational 20-page solution?
Wonderful. Great question, Deepthi. Anybody would like to comment? Meenakshi, Sanjeeta?
Yeah, I mean, the one way we can think of keeping it very simple for the manager level is to be able to connect with the workers and be able to reach out to the workers without having using strong heavy words like depression, anxiety, stress. We can actually reach out to them in a very simple and easier way and have a connect with them as far as possible. So that is one way of creating an environment of compassion and care, so that people are ready to come and talk of their problems. They may not be encouraged to talk of their personal problems, unless they want to. There may not be, but at least they are encouraged, and that gap between the manager and the others should be reduced by reaching out to them. That is my take on this.
So the other thing I would like to just come in, I'm going to say, just to share with you, Deepthi, the connotation has to change. We cannot call it mental health, and I'm talking about this as late as last Friday. I was speaking to a very senior person in a very large organization, and he asked me the same question: is there a mental word somewhere? I hope the program is not going to be about mental. So because people, one is that there are two parts. One is people talk loosely about depression and anxiety, and there are others who would not like to be associated with the word mental. So they would, that's because they have a certain position in society, in their organization. So what, Jayashree, I don't know if she's here and she could come in, but globally, the conversation is changing to brain health. And, we are shifting from calling it mental health to brain health. And I think that's a great way to kind of change the connotation of the conversation. Venkat, do you want to answer Deepti's second question? Because I think that's very relevant in terms of business outcomes and, how do you tie that in? Because I think that's something which is, you're on mute, Venkat.
I'll just point you to Pushpal Roy, if everybody remembers the context of Pushpal Roy, basically. He was the manager who was caught on a Zoom call talking to his team members in a very, very rude manner. And it was so rude that it went viral on social media, and the organization had to step in and kind of take action against him. Now, if I were to kind of break it down for you, two aspects of how to kind of incorporate it into the HR quote unquote spectrum, basically, for you. The one would be to kind of have policy amendment, which is to ensure that issues with regard to mental well-being are somewhere addressed in the policy spectrum, which essentially means that we are going to kind of create a framework which kind of ties in somewhere into our policy HR policies as to what mental well-being is, what it constitutes from the organization's perspective, what is it that we are going to have look out for from an HR point of view, and cascade those HR policies down to the line managers to make sure that they are also kind of aware or equipped or even trained for that matter in terms of understanding what are at least the symptoms of mental well-being, so that a specialist can come in. Even if they can kind of go to a doctor and tell them the symptom, a specialist can come in and solve the problem, because it's not in their domain to understand exactly what the issue with the person is. But reading one's own subordinates or reading one's own team members, I think is a very fundamental requirement for any manager. And if the manager is not able to do that, then it is something that we need to equip them for. The second part that we should look at in terms of organizations is that attrition is something which we've always struggled with as organizations. And we all know that a toxic boss is the reason that employees typically tend to leave organizations. So if we were to take action from a retention perspective, you would find that the people who are undergoing the maximum amount of stress and therefore looking out for opportunities are the people under the toxic and the bad managers. So if you are able to even identify them, for leave alone weeding them out. These are half the cases with the issues with regard to mental well-being, essentially. If we can make them better individuals, or we can help them kind of understand and empathize with their team members well, we will probably be able to stem attrition to a very large extent. So in terms of the reason as to why I should kind of put in money in the long term into mental well-being, this is one of the key reasons, especially for IT-enabled companies where 30% of your business is people, which is employee costs, basically. And if your replacement is going to be that expensive, you straight away have justification on ROI as to why it's important. Just hang on
to it. Great.
Archana, if I may now come in, I'm so sorry I couldn't unmute myself then.
Sure. Yeah.
So the question that, or the concern that Deepa raised was extremely relevant, and I can completely resonate with it from the HR perspective. That for the HR team to become the champions of ensuring this well-being of employees becomes more like a task at hand, and they do it along with many other assignments, and then it becomes an appraisal KRA for them. How much is the utilization and how are you promoting this whole investment that we have done in employee well-being. And it completely loses the essence. It becomes more of one task to be performed rather than actually reaching out to people and helping them solve their problems. So the way probably, and this is a problem statement, but we have to find a solution to this problem because we can't stay with the problem. And one of the things that can help is, of course, whenever we are introducing this, it has to have the management go ahead, otherwise you can't do it. But it has to have the management's involvement on a regular basis. Also, what we can do is that we can create these support groups within the organization, which is not driven only by the HR. and as a mentor to that support group, a senior person can be assigned, so that it's the involvement of everybody where these groups just have conversations on a defined, like, once in 2 weeks or once in a month, whichever is the frequency, where people just talk about what are the issues that the world is facing, what our children are facing, what teenagers are facing, and just have a group conversation around these things rather than making it a very critical issue for the HR to drive. And that makes it more general, that makes it more like a part of the DNA of the organization, and the involvement of the line managers becomes very important. So it's a cross hierarchy group of people in a region where just that is to be monitored, that regional head or the business heads KRA should have in his people KRAs, it should have, are you having these conversations about well-being of employees, whether it is physical, mental, financial, in whichever manner. So link it to all the other problems that people face, because mental health is not in isolation. It is due to financial problems. It is due to professional issues. It could be many things. So if you have an open forum created where people can talk about it, not maybe even taking their name, but saying people are facing this issue, at least when you open up and speak about it, it lowers your anxiety level. And when you hear other people talking in the same language, you feel I'm not isolated. There are others also who are going through it. Somebody's children may be going through it, somebody's friends may be going through it. So hearing about these stories also lowers anxiety. And then you find someone whom you could probably offline go and meet and talk and start having more of a personal conversation, somebody who doesn't judge you within the organization also. So once you incorporate it not as a task to be done, but more like this is the way we do things within the organization, this is our organization culture, and have the buy-in from the top management to do it, then only these things will stabilize. Otherwise, they will always remain, have you ticked the box on health, mental health initiatives that we have put so much money on? How many are the people who've used, what has been the utilization level, etc. I said, how can we promote this app more? That's not what we are driving it for. Even if 0% goes, you should be more than happy that your team probably doesn't have a mental health problem. You don't have to have 50 people going there, right? So, of course, like they were saying, there are many, seminars or webinars that these companies also do, which are general in nature, which if you attend, it helps you in lowering down your thing. But I have personally experienced that you incorporate a cross-functional team and you have people chatting about it also. It helps a lot in feeling less anxious amongst employees. So that's what I wanted to share.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we all are propagating. One is how do we reduce the stigma, and the second thing is that how do we have create a culture which is policy driven, which is owned by managers, not just HR, and which is also make it an everyday conversation. How do you reduce that stigma around that? And I think all of you can see the results from the mental health support people are providing to their teams. So the highest is all of the above. Okay, great. So in that sensitization program for managers and providing access for professional support. That's the number. Agree. Interesting. So Venkat, you have already answered my next question. I was going to ask you about, what are the key frameworks of a mental health, key constituents of a mental health framework in organizations. So, are there any other questions before we kind of look at some other opinions? Is there any? Yes, please, Sanjay, you can come in and add your comments.
Okay. Hi, Archana. Sorry, I was a bit late, but very interesting topic and the discussion that is going on. You just wanted to put my comments here. I see this problem, very differently. There are two aspects to it. First, I think people don't want to talk about it. And I think people had said about it, educating them that this is a problem. First of all, people don't think that mental health or stress is an issue, they just take it and they prolong it for very long till it becomes very difficult to manage. So I would say that there are, I think, two ways to handle this. One is more proactive or preventive way, and I think education or educating people in the corporate world, I think is very important. I think they should also include the families, because the stress is not only the work stress, but it is also stress which if you go to the basic definition of what is stress, it is what is the goal that we have set in for ourselves, and what we can, and if we are not able to achieve that goal, it creates stress. So I think the education should be either to manage the goal that we have set, be contented, especially on the financial side or otherwise, or I think give more education so that somebody is apt, has a training to reach to that goal. I think we have seen the corporate world, the goals, quarter after quarter, are pushed, but then there is nobody who talks about how to achieve those goals. I think it would be very pertinent on the leaders, not only to set the goals, but also to educate people, to also tell them how to achieve those goals. And I think that is very important. And I think at the goals could be family, financial, marriage related, or many aspects. I would not go into that. Second, I think once somebody is having a lot of stress, and I think that is impacting his mental status, I think it would be important that there should be an independent body, because I personally feel that people, very difficult for people to talk to the managers. They don't want to talk to the peers. They're all competitors, right? They would never open up. HR, I think, is the best, but has a limitation. I would say that there should be an independent body who, I think, somebody, who they cannot put a face to it. Could be a toll-free number, an app, or something, where they can reach out, and talk about it. It can be AI bot, it can be anything. So, I think important thing is somebody to listen to them. I think there are many people who gives, free suggestions, but there are very few who listens. So I think if we can build something around this, it can greatly help. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
No, Sanjay, thank you for coming in and sharing this point. Very valid. And I think the determinants of any individual's mental health in workplace is part of his work and part of his family, and what he's carrying with him to work. Maybe he has a child who needs caregiving. Maybe he has a parent who needs caregiving. Maybe there are other dynamics playing out. So it's not just the work at hand or the goals or targets which he has to achieve. And if managers are trained to have those conversations, I think that can play a key role. We are almost running out of time, and I would like to request all my panelists to give us their key takeaways from today's conversation, and what would be one or two things that you would like to leave the audience with. So Venkat, can I request you to come in?
Yeah. So in my, like I said at the starting of the conversation, I think it's been very enlightening in terms of trying to arrive at issues that organizations face. And I think Glory kind of laid out the ask at the beginning of the conversation very well for me, in terms of being able to kind of articulate what the challenges that organization faces. And also these questions, I think, were also a little eye-opening in terms of knowing from an HR practitioner's perspective, how does this all kind of get embedded in such a way that it's not just another tick in a box that needs to be done, but something that needs to be institutionalized. So I think that's the important thing that we need to focus on when we are looking at initiatives in our organizations. And we also need to make sure that each one of us has each organization's needs are diverse, each organization's expectations are diverse. It's not possible to kind of have a model which fits everybody. but it's possible to design a bespoke model which is relevant to the context of that organization. And I think it's important for us to do that to start with. Start small and start with small bites, basically, to make sure that we kind of devise and design something which is which is simple and easy for everybody to understand, and two, which is propagatable, which we can kind of carry to people and explain to them very well. If you're able to do these two things in the first part of the design aspect of the programs, I think the organizations will start to see the value as we go forward.
Great, great. Yeah, Glory, would you like to come in? I know you have to drop off for another call, so I don't want you to have mental health stress because of this.
Okay. I will not call this as a mental stress or a health issue, Archana. It's just part of life. My key takeaway is it's like we need to have a forum created in an organization where we can talk about it. Okay. Even the definition of, I think the brain health is a very good thing, right? It totally removes the stigma immediately, saying, okay, it's something to do with mental illness. So it creates a lot of positivity when we talk about, okay, your brain health. People would be more open to talk about it, more open to do any assessment to know where is the problem and how they can take any kind of a treatment or any kind of a therapy that is needed. So my key takeaway is more about creating a forum, creating awareness to people, okay, and making it, it's very similar to that you are having a BP, right? People don't talk bad about it. They in fact talk, oh, I'm overweight, my BP is high. So it's similar to that, right? My brain health is not that great. I need to do some of this stuff to improve it. So that brings in a lot of positivity. I'm sure this would help us to completely change the way we are looking at the mental well-being of people at this time.
Sure.
Thanks, Rachna, for this time, and I'll have to drop off at this time.
Okay, Chloe, thank you. I'll catch up with you later. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, Meenakshi. Yeah. Would you like to come in and say something, Meenakshi?
Yeah. So I completely agree with Glory here that we need to change the narrative around mental health and make it, use words like brain health, because it completely removes the stigma. It makes it more biological. And if we talk about biological illnesses, people are not so scared. I mean, people have diabetes, they have hypertension, but these are not stigmatized. So if we can use terms like these, like well-being or brain health, it really, it helps. Secondly, leaders can also, even if they're not trained, they can uh, lead by example, by sharing what they are experiencing. I'm not talking about this personal details, but maybe something like that they're worried about the children, or they're worried about electricity bills and rising costs, things like that. So we do not need to have those very serious discussions, but we need leaders to be more involved in um, stress related issues and lead by example. So they can actually show people that everybody goes through these issues, and it's not a big deal. It can be dealt with by by talking to their colleagues, or by taking professional help. So these are my two takeaways from this discussion.
Yeah, and I would like to add to this, encourage self-care, because that is mental well-being as a self-care. And, like how we in Samvedna's map tool, we have actually got well-being activities, right? So it's not like today I don't have a problem, so I'm fine. There are wellness activities which can be encouraged, self-care activities which individuals can do on an ongoing basis that can contribute to building and institutionalizing that culture, along with talking more in terms of brain health. Sanjeeta, you have a minute because we need to wrap up this.
Yeah. As a clinical psychologist, I have always had this battle with wrong concept about mental health per se. because people misunderstand that as mental illness. No, it is not mental illness that we need to emphasize on. For that we have experts, in order to reach a certain level of health, positive health, we need to work hard, whether it's physical or mental, because with stress there are other problems, there are gut problems, there are breathing problems, there's so many other physical issues. So a healthy mind dwells in a healthy body, and a healthy body carries the healthy mind. So we need to understand that balance, and this is what we need as mental health, as stakeholders. We need to express, and we need to talk about, and like you're doing this webinar, so we all need to talk about this at length and always, which encouraging people to come and talk, just come and talk.
Great, great.
Yeah, that unburdens you to a large extent and gives you a better insight into how to deal with particular issues in life, and improving your mental as well as physical, or bringing a balance between your mind and body is the need of the day to day.
Absolutely, absolutely agree with you. So with this, I think I would like to come to an end of this session, because I know everybody has other meetings to go to. But I just like to quickly summarize as to what I understood as the key takeaways from the panelists as well as the participants. Bespoke models starting with small initiatives, I think, is very important. Something which can be sustained and which can be propagated. I think social media can play a big role in this, or internal social media. There are within organizations, you have Slack and other tools to create this kind of initiative. Sensitizing the managers, doing more and more of awareness drives. I think one of the things which came out very clearly was support groups. How do we create support groups within organization, which is an independent of the HR or the managers, which can be run on an ongoing basis. And change the connotation, make it brain health instead of mental health, and encourage well-being and self-care. I think that is the key messages I have understood. It was lovely having you all over here. Thank you, Venkat, for sharing your insights, and Sanjeeta for coming in and sharing your perspectives. Thank you all the participants for this. Joining us for our first webinar on employee mental well-being. If there are other topics you would like to talk about, please do write to us at our contact@samvednacare.com, and share with us what you feel. If you have any questions about our employee mental well-being services, we'll be happy to talk about it with you. But at Samvedna, we are very focused on creating a organizational framework, and it's a challenge because we have always thought through the solutions from a top-down approach and holistically, whereas certain times people are asking us for quick wins. So and that's where we kind of try to maintain a balance, but we'll be happy to have this conversation with any one of you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Venkat. Thanks, Sanjeeta and Meenakshi. Thank you. Thanks, Navya.